welcome. If you're a first-time, second-time viewer, maybe you're a little new to the church, or maybe you're just seeing this video someone shares with you a little bit later today. So glad, whatever the reason you're watching, we're just glad you're watching. And my name's Isaac, in case I think most people that are watching this video know who I am. We're a little bit early. We've got about a minute before we're going to get started, so I always like to jump online a little bit early, give people a kind of a opportunity to see it. And if you are watching right now, I don't know if you knew this, but when we post something as the church and even on my own Facebook page, I think it's like something like 3 or 5% of people get the actual notification. So if you got the notification today, Facebook and their infinite wisdom has determined that you receive this update. And so I would just encourage you to maybe share this with somebody and help us get the word out. Obviously, today is the last Sunday in October, and so we got some cool stuff happening today. And if you're jumping online, I'm here online with you, and so just maybe say hey in the comments. If you can, I'm going to mute this real quick so we don't hear one another. But if you're jumping on, let us know that you are jumping on. And then, of course, if you happen to jump on this later, thanks again for watching this. So it's 9 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and get started. And if somebody jumps on, just say, hey, I'm going to kind of be looking back and forth with the screen. But always a joy of mine to kind of keep people in the know with what things are coming up and what's been happening at the church and throughout the week. And again, I just felt like we probably should have started this earlier. You know, you're probably thinking, Isaac, you know, this is like your 5th week doing this. You should have been doing this like 3-4 months ago. So I apologize, with that. But the important thing is that we're doing it. And so I know for a lot of people that are a part of our church, it can feel in some ways like we don't really know what's going on or what good things are happening. You know, are we leading people in a growing relationship with Jesus? And of course, if you're plugged in, that's not a question, right? Because you know what's happening, you're involved in it, you're a part of it. And that's a great thing that you're a part of. And but for those of us maybe that are a little on the fringes and life's just got you super busy like it has many of us, I know that this is always helpful content for you. So first and foremost, today is the last Sunday of October, and that means that we're gathering in person in just under an hour. And I'm so excited to be gathering with you for the second time here at, well, it's actually our 5th time meeting corporately together in a meeting space as a church in 2020, but always a great time. We had such a fantastic time in September, and I just want to encourage you, if you don't have the information of where we're meeting this Sunday in less than an hour, please reach out to me here and just type, or you can direct message me on Facebook, or if you got my number, just send me a text real quick and let me give you the information of where we're going to be meeting. Very excited to be doing that today. And again, it was always a joy to be meeting with people in person, especially during this season. Jennifer, good morning. Thanks for jumping online, and appreciate you and your family. And then also just wanted to let you know that we'll have a couple snacks and some stuff. Of course, this morning we'll also have some face masks, hand sanitizer for everybody in case you want to use those. But for those of you that are part of our church, don't let anything stop you from being a part of that today. And in the event that you're traveling or you're on business or something like that, and you're not going to be able to make it today, we totally get that. So we will be recording today's message online, and then we will be posting it a bit later. And so again, 10 a.m. this morning, we'll be live and in person. If you'd like the address, please send me a text or a direct message and just let me know. And for those of you that are watching this video, maybe sharing it with somebody, this is a perfect opportunity. You can get anything ready in an hour, especially for something exciting. And make no mistake about it, today's going to be exciting. We're talking about voting and unity today in the message. And so if you've got a friend, shoot a text right now. Just let them know, hey, I'd love for you to come with me. This is going to be a fun time. It's very family oriented, and it's just a great time around the Word and getting equipped for this very unique season that we're all in right now. And so you're invited. If you're watching this video, you're invited. And then, of course, throughout the week, we have Tuesday nights, we have a group that we meet with couples, and we will be shifting that night, it looks like very soon, also to Wednesday night. And so if you would like some information about that group, let me know. And we just had some schedule changes with some of the couples in that group, and so we're doing our best. We try to keep a lot of the group stuff a little open-handed. We know schedules do change and different seasons come up. Sunday, it's like this is kind of the day and the time that we meet. It's a little bit more crystallized in a lot of ways, but each of the groups, for example, our normal Wednesday night group that's going not book by book, but kind of going through a Bible study, they are right now in kind of a 2 to 3 week, actually I think it's a 4-week break, and they're actually getting ready to crack into a book study and a Bible study through the book of 1 Peter. And a guy in our church will be facilitating that group, and so he's a phenomenal teacher, and is going to do a great job with that group, and it's been awesome to see him be brought up from within the ranks of our community groups with our current community group leader. And so I want to encourage you, if you're looking for a great Bible study, that is going to be a phenomenal group. 2 Peter, 1 Peter is going to be a great study, and I would encourage you to reach out and get some information with regards to that. Of course, with the couples group, I'm leading that group. Me and my wife, we facilitate that group, and it's a lot of fun. We do really, it's a little bit more of a video-based series, and so you're invited to that. And then, of course, if you're a guy, we've not been able to meet for the past 2 weeks just with stuff coming up, but it's really on the calendar every single Thursday at 5 p.m. over at Tustin and Keens. Is a great opportunity going through some just more effectiveness in discipleship as men of Christ. We're talking about the 10 commands of Christ. And if you've ever wondered, Jesus said, right, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. And maybe you've heard a weird message one day where this guy started listing all this stuff that, was like Jesus's commandments. And so maybe you felt that service or that time of worship more beat up than you did encouraged and empowered and equipped to actually go do the commands of Christ. And this study is not that 100%. It's a very, objective look at what Jesus said we're to be doing as their disciples. And so I want to encourage you to be a part of that as well. Again, as always, in each of these instances, whether it's the Tuesday night group, which is at 7:30, or the couples group, which is going to meet at 7:30, if it's the Through the Book of the Bible study at 6:30 p.m., or if it's the men's group at 5 p.m. on Thursdays, you can actually access and just let us know that you want to be a part of that just by filling out the connection card that's actually in the I'm going to call this show notes, because this isn't a show. Maybe my personality makes it feel like a show. I don't know. You can let me know in the comments maybe or whatever. But in the links above me or to the right or left, whichever it is on your device, you're going to see the connection card link, and it's just a name and an email address form, but I believe there's some comment ability, or you could actually just do the next steps form. In fact, that might even be a little bit more relevant, because it's going to give you an opportunity to kind of sign up for what's called discipleship. And so that's really what that is as our mission, right, of leading people in a growing relationship with Jesus. That's where you're going to be able to plug in the most and experience that mission of our church a little bit more pointedly. And so, and of course, I always like to share stories. I was out just praying with some people in the neighborhood. I think I've mentioned this before. And if you'd ever be interested in jumping in and doing that, we have a couple people at our church that are actually, they come with me throughout the week. If you'd be interested in jumping in with me at some night in the week, Monday or Wednesday or some other night, let me know. And this past week, it was just an incredible opportunity I had with a gentleman who had literally 4 days previously, he had gotten laid off from his job in the sense of they had just really shut down the hours. So he wasn't actually let go, but it was like he was working 4 hours a week. And it was just so amazing how we had the opportunity to meet this guy, just outside of his house at an appointed time. God knew that this guy needed encouragement, not really plugged into church anywhere at all, was raised with a little bit of a history of Christianity, so we're really not quite sure if he's a Christian yet, but we got to know him a little bit, and God just opened up this incredible door to where we were actually able to pray with him right there on the spot and encourage him. He was deeply appreciated. But today we're actually going to be in so we've just been doing a two-part kind of series over the past 2 weeks, unity and voting, everybody's favorite topic, obviously, right now. And if it's not your favorite topic, it doesn't even matter because, you're voting and you're having friends that are voting, and we obviously in this crazy season that we're in right now. And so, not just I thought, but I think, sometimes you're thinking through like what you guys are processing through, not just at home conversations, but also at work and friends and family, neighbors. Everybody's talking about it, whether you want to or not. I mean, anybody else here had a conversation you didn't want to be a part of with politics? Like, yeah, all of them, right? Nobody wants to talk about it. So we're not going to talk about politics today in the sense of political policy and stuff like that. We're only going to talk about politics from the vantage point of how can we navigate this whole situation right now and be the type of people that would represent Jesus well. I think that's really the, not maybe burning question in our minds, but it's probably some sort of question or an experience that maybe some friends of yours have had with respect to Christians, where they were super adamant about the policy and politics and politician, but they didn't really seem to do well meshing that with their faith, or at least how it would seem like Jesus would interact with people during a time like this. And so my hope would be that we all kind of are able to go back into whatever, school or your job or your neighbor or your neighborhood, extended family that's going to disagree with you politically, and still make it through the next week and a half, 2 weeks, with not just some sort of sanity, but also with an ability to lean into those people's lives for the sake of eternity. And we said this last week, right? Never sacrifice your influence with someone's eternity over things that are temporary. And even though throughout the span of our lifetime, politicians are going to do what politicians do, we're going to vote as long as there's an American system here. At the end of the day, when we go into eternity, all that stuff is in submission to the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So, really we want to make sure that we're keeping the priority. And with that, right, we have this real sense of trying to rush through this season, right? I don't know about you, but I'm like, can we just get through November? COVID will be gone. It'll be amazing. They'll find this miraculous cure for it. It'll be great. And now I don't have to worry about real weird, tense, awkward conversations with friends and family over the coffee or over the dinner table. I don't know. You can sense, especially in this year, I probably every election year, it feels super unique with the pressure, but this year is another level, it just feels like, right? So we can kind of be wanting to rush through this season and just get it over with. And if we're not careful, what we'll do is we will end up trying to rush through this season, but we'll also rush through people, and we'll rush through conversations, and we'll rush from here to there, and we're because the focus is not really stewarding this season well. It's just about getting through it. Just get me through this so I can place my vote, so I can cast my ballot, and then I never have to talk about this for another 4 years or 4 weeks until Thanksgiving gets here and my family's over. And that's a whole other deal. But we have to be careful about rushing through seasons of our life. We have to be really careful about this, wanting to just get through it, because, no doubt every single one of us, I know you can relate. You woke up late and now you're rushing to get ready, right? You're rushing to get out the door. Anybody else here rushed out the door, right? Woke up late, alarm, you snoozed one too many times, and now you're just trying to get out the door, and so you're tired. And so when you have that pressure to rush, what do you typically do? You typically try to go as fast as possible. It's not about doing it well, it's not about doing it graceful, it's about just getting it done. And so maybe you had the situation where, like me, I was in a rush and I tied my shoes, about tripped myself over my shoelaces because I did a really bad job of tying my shoes, about killed myself trying to get out the door. Or maybe you've done like I've done and walked outside and your shirt's on backwards, or it's on inside out, or you realize halfway through the day, oh, other things are on inside out. Okay, great. Because why? Because you were just trying to get stuff done. You were just trying to get through it because you're in a rush. Our season of life is kind of weird right now. Obviously, church is a big priority, but I'm working a job, I'm married, got 4 kids. You want to talk about feeling pulled and rushed in a bunch of different directions. If you have kids, you're rushed everywhere you go, right? So it's just one of those seasons that we're in where it's kind of you can feel pulled in a lot of different directions, and it just feels rushed, and it's very, very compressed. And so while we're tempted on a lot of times to just rush and get things done as quick as possible, we also understand that's not the best way to go through things, because we're going to miss stuff. And especially in this season, we're going to miss people, we're going to miss opportunities to connect, we're going to miss opportunities to influence, we're going to miss opportunities to share our faith, we're going to be missing opportunities to pray with people. And so there's a statement, you've probably heard this outside of a military context, but the statement is, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And it just kind of, it's a good mental reset, because in that moment when you've got a lot of pressure and a lot of things to do, your tendency is going to be to rush. And so it's helpful to remember, no, okay, don't rush, slow is smooth, and then smooth is fast. So really when we want to do things fast, actually it's counterintuitive, but what we actually should do is slow down. We should slow down mentally, we should slow down physically, because when we're able to process what we're doing, we can execute it with precision, and then that leads to speed. And so I want you to kind of think about that statement as we go through this thought with James, because that's essentially what James is going to talk about to these people. These people were dealing with a lot of trials, they were dealing with a lot of difficulty, and there was a lot of disagreements with how they were processing through these trials in their life. And so there was disagreement between Christians about what it meant, what they were supposed to do about it, how they were supposed to react to it. I mean, I know this season's really hard for us to kind of put ourselves in their shoes, but they were having difficulty with how they were responding to things that are going on in their life, especially as it comes to adversity. So slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And then as we talk about this political season, I want you to remember something as well, and that's a statement that was made by Rufus Miles. Because you're going to differ from everybody else on how they vote, how they do politics, and you're going to have this temptation to just rush through the season and just get through it so you don't have to talk about this anymore. We ought to always remember, with what we're going to learn from James today, is the statement he said. It says, where you stand depends on where you sit. Where you stand on issues, where you stand on things in life is always going to be processed from where you sit, right? So all of us have a lot of different backgrounds. Some of us come from money, some of us don't come from money. Some of us had to work for everything, some of us had some things handed to us. Some of us were raised in a conservative environment, some of us were not. The point is, we have to recognize this, that where you stand on political issues and spiritual issues, and where you stand on monetary issues and parenting issues or child raising issues, wherever you stand on these things has in large part a lot to do with where you sit, where you come from. It's shaped how you view things. And so we want to keep this in mind especially as we navigate through the season, because if we're not careful, we'll forget that about everybody else but us. We all know our lives have shaped the way that we think about things, right? But we can forget sometimes that our friends have a completely different upbringing, or our neighbors have a completely different upbringing, to the point where we're just rushing through the season. I don't want to hear you, I don't want to listen to you, because I've got my thing, I'm all about my thing. So look what James says in verse number 19 of chapter number 1. He says this, know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. James says, look, if you're going to be quick at something that requires no talking, just listening. And James kind of gives us 3 practical things that you and I can just out the gate incorporate over the conversations with our friends, with our classmates, with people we work with our neighbors, with family members. And that's be quick to hear, be slow to speak, and be slow to anger, or be slow to wrath. So first of all, listen, right? He says be quick to hear. So listen to people who don't experience the world in the same way you do. In other words, when someone's coming at an angle coming from a different angle than you are on a particular subject, apply what James says here. Be quick to hear. Listen to people who don't experience the world in the same way you do. Second of all, learn. He says, be quick to hear, slow to speak. You know what happens when you're slow to offer your opinion? You're able to hear someone else's. When you're slow to give your perspective, you're able to take in someone else's paradigm or their perspective. And this guy named Sam Harris is attributed with this statement. Now, Sam Harris is an atheist, okay, so I'm not going to tell you all the time, like, take advice from atheists, but what he says is very interesting as it correlates with what we're learning from the book of James here. He says this: pay attention to the limits of your knowledge. And we just all have to recognize that, right? There are some things that we don't know, especially when we consider this idea of where you stand is large part based on where you sit. There are things that you don't know, that you've not experienced, that other people have, that you and I during this season have an opportunity, in our being quick to hear and slow to speak, we have an opportunity to learn from people in our lives. And then finally, and maybe more appropriately or more importantly, is to love. So listen, learn, and love. He says, look, be slow to anger. Well, if you're slow to anger, what are you doing? You're loving people. Love. And again, we talked about this last week. Never burn a relational bridge over a political view. Never burn a relational bridge over a political view. At the end of the day, November is going to pass. 2020 election is going to go through. And at the end of that conversation, at the end of this season, the question that ought to really be formulating in our mind is, am I still going to have the opportunity to speak truth into this person's life? Am I going to still have the opportunity to come over to their house and pray with them about serious matters? Am I still going to have the opportunity to speak eternal truths into this individual's life? And if we're rushing through this season, we will miss these opportunities. So we've got to slow down whenever it comes to this type of interaction with people, because when we don't, you know what happens? Our passions begin to rise up. Now, I know none of you are really, really passionate about your political beliefs. You know, I'm sure you've never had a passionate discussion with a friend or a coworker about what how you're going to vote and who you believe in, whether it's the presidential election or an assemblyman. I know you don't really struggle with that, but sometimes I struggle with that. So I'll just be cathartic confession for me today. But whenever we're passionate about something, and not just politics, but whenever we're passionate about something, what begins to rise up in us when we don't see things going our way and our stuff not getting done, it begins to translate from passion to anger, which is exactly what James is trying to steer these people away from. Don't give in to anger. Don't let your passions arouse you to anger, because when we get passionate about stuff, we can become very, very angry. And listen, when anger gets the best of us, people then see the worst in us. When our anger gets the best of us, people see the worst in us. I've come home, again, I talked about we're in a really kind of crazy stretch season right now, right? So planning is a big piece of our day. This afternoon, me and Bethany are going to sit down and we're going to talk about all the million things my kids have assigned me to do this week, right? and so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about like what's coming up, like what my work schedule's like, what I'm doing in the afternoons, like what's going on with our kids. And so I'll just be honest with you. Sometimes I come home and things are not going according to the plan. And I'm very excited about the plan. And I'm very, my hope has been placed in the plan, okay? And so when I come home and things are starting to fall apart, I will be very passionate about the plan. And in my passion for the plan, my anger will evoke because things are not going in my direction. Now, I know you've never done that ever in your life, but what I realized and what I learned again, right, because I repeat this every so often, is that my anger never has my best interest in mind. My anger never has my best interest in mind. You know what my anger has in mind? It has my interest in mind. And that's it. It has my interest in mind, but it actually doesn't have my best interest in mind. And maybe you've seen this play out in your life where you got angry about something because it was your interest, but then you realized it wasn't your best interest. And so when our anger takes control, people begin to see the worst in us. And I've learned that over and over again. So James cautions these believers, don't rush to anger. Because your anger and your passion are revolving about what's best for you or your desires, not really what's best for you in those instances. And so you and I want to be cautioned again, rushing to anger. And James is not saying this to these people because anger is a sin, okay? He's saying this because anger's a sign. Anger's not a sin. Look, we know this, right? The Bible tells us, be angry and sin not. So the Bible doesn't take this approach at anger like it's a sin or it's wrong.
It's just a sign. In fact, your emotions, all of our emotions, are signs. They're not wrong. They're just indicators, right? When you're flashing red, it's an indicator something's going on. Like you're really passionate about this. When you're really sad, it's an indicator, right? Something's going on, unless you're a woman and you're, then it's just all over the place. But I don't know. Anyway, so it's the pregnancy hormones, right? All right, I'm going to back up. We'll edit that out later. Okay, just moving right along. Okay, but my point is, right? James is not cautioning these people because anger is a sin. It's because it's a sign. It's an indicator. Now, your anger may be an indicator that maybe you've anchored more to this thing than you have to God. Maybe you've anchored your joy more to things going your way than you have in God. Maybe you've anchored your hope in this thing, this temporary thing, more than you have in God. And so it's a sign. It's indicating because you're so angry about this that you've actually assigned this something more than God in your life. It could be that you're trying to accomplish, it could be an indicator that you're trying to accomplish something out of this season for your life. This is not the season that God has for you to be accomplishing this or that. Or it could be something a little more along the lines of what James is talking about here as it relates to being angry because you cannot accomplish something that only God can accomplish. Notice in the next verse, verse number 20, he says, be slow to anger, right? Well, why? Next verse, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. So James is saying, look, when you're angry, it may be that you're asking things to happen that are outside of your control, and you're very upset because things are not just not going according to your plan, but you're upset because they're not going according to your plan because your plan is the right plan. And we all tend to fall into this category, especially in politics, because you're voting the way you do, and I'm voting the way I do, because I believe this is the right way for this to go. Like, this is the right direction for the country. This is the right direction for our town. This is the right direction for people, right? I mean, because we're so right. I mean, Jesus is right, right? God is right. Obviously, God's a Republican, I mean, it's clear as day, James. It's right there. I don't see how people can't see it.
Amen, brother.
But then on the left, right, Jesus was a walking healthcare dispensing machine. It was free for everybody. He didn't charge anybody. So clearly, God's a Democrat. I mean, there's just these things, right? We're just so convinced that we are in the right. And if we're not careful, we can get into this vein to where our party is what God's desire for our country is because of the way that we're voting. And what we all just need a reset here is that, look, Jesus didn't come, and Dr. Tony Evans, he has this famous quote. He said, Jesus didn't come to take sides. He came to take over. And that's really the fact of the matter, right? The reality is you and I don't really know what God's doing all the time in every situation. We can't. We're limited. We're finite. And oftentimes when we're so frustrated with things that are going on in our country and things that are going on in our life and things that are going on with our jobs and going on in our personal matters and our finances and we're looking around and we're like, God, this doesn't make any sense. It's out of control. You've lost control. What are you doing? There's no way you've got a handle on this. And what happens? We get angry. And so he says, look, the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. The reason slowing down is so important is because we want to see things happen. We want to see things happen fast. We want to see things from our point of view. We want people to see things from our point of view. We want them to get on our team. We want them to become this or that. We want to achieve this or that. And when it's not happening, anger occurs. Anger does not produce the righteousness of God. I mean, think about it, right? What of man has ever produced what only God can do? And so in some ways, right, to do this, we're going to have to take ourselves out of the driver's seat of America. We're going to have to take ourselves out of the driver's seat of what we think is right for our country. And again, right, we're not talking about the way you vote, and we're not talking about conclusions you've drawn. We're talking about navigating this season as someone who is still being a kingdom influence for Christ. We're just going to have to recognize that there is a sovereign plan that I'm not able to see, both for our country, but also for your life. And so we ought to be slow to anger. And so if you oftentimes find yourself becoming more angry and more angry, then I want to encourage you to think about the role in which God may be playing and doing things on a much larger scale than you or I can even fathom. You see, anger speeds up, okay, but love slows down. You're going to find that if you allow yourself to get more angry and more angry and more angry in this season, you're going to want to move, and you will move. You'll move faster through that season in your life. Now, certainly we could apply this to politics, but we can also apply this to all areas of our life. Because when things aren't going our way, what do? We want to work harder to make it come to pass. We want to do more things. We want to say more things and do more things and work harder and do all these things to bring something that we're just convinced ought to be. And so what I want to encourage you, as he talks about being slow to anger, recognize your anger will speed you up, but your love will slow you down. The more angry you become, the more passionate you become in this season about your thing, the faster you're going to move past people. But the more you love, the more you take time to love, the more you're filled with love, the slower you're going to move through people, the slower you're going to communicate with people. Everything in the room is just going to, when you get angry, everything in the room goes, it just brings it up, right? I mean, everything moves faster. The consequences move faster for sure. But when you love people and you're filled with love, everything in the room just kind of goes down. It relaxes. You're able to talk. You're able to think. You're able to see the other person. You're able to glean understanding. James goes on and he says, therefore, put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness and receive with meekness the implanted word which is able to save your souls. You see, James nudges them into a practice to help them fulfill a greater purpose than their passions, preference, or politics. And this is why we're moving in this direction, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. We want to go slow because it helps us be smooth, and when smooth, then we're fast. We can actually slow down a little bit and not just see what we want and not just see what our interests are or what's in our best interest, but in reality what's in God's interest, which is fundamentally in our best interest. And the way that we can do that is this idea that James begins to break into and shifts our thinking from just simply being patient with people to a greater purpose. Like, this season is such an opportunity for people who are followers of Jesus. Because we have an opportunity, certainly by listening a little longer and loving people a little better and learning from other people, certainly that displays a kingdom Christ-like mentality. But there's so much more that you and I can bring to the table as followers of Jesus. But to do that, James says, look, you've got to change. You and I have got to change. And as we navigate this season, he says, therefore, put away. This word put away is the idea of like changing clothes, is kind of the idea. So you're going to put off something and you're going to put back on something. And when we change clothes, you and I know this, sometimes our kids struggle with this, but we know whenever you are done wearing your clothes, you put them in the washing machine and you don't wear them again until they're clean, right? You don't wear dirty clothes. And so the idea is that we would take off these things like a cloth, take off filthiness and rampant wickedness, and then we would we would put back on with meekness the implanted word which is able to save your souls. During this season, we have to make a major priority about receiving the word. Receiving the word. Not just reading the word, but receiving the word. He talks about receive with meekness. And guys, sometimes we can look at a word like meekness and that feels a little feminine to us. But the idea of meekness is I'm sensitive. I'm sensitive. It's like if you've ever touched something extremely hot, or you took a sip of coffee and it was way too hot. What happens? Your tongue is extremely sensitive. Your fingers and what you touch are extremely sensitive, and that's the idea. And if we're not careful during the season, you know what we're sensitive to? The talking heads, and the political pundits, and the opinions of our friends on how they vote or what they think about how we're voting. And we're dull to God's truth. We're dull to the Word of God. We're not sensitive to it. So when we hear it, it just kind of goes in one ear and out the other. It doesn't really get into our heart and affect us, but that's what we have to do. That's the way in which, you and I can't just leave here and be like, okay, I'm going to listen to people better, I'm going to value their opinion more, and I'm going to love people more. You can't will that into existence. You just can't, right? And James knows that. James, the brother of Jesus. If there's anybody who understands the difficulty of will worship, if we can use that phrase, it's James. And so James says, look, the way that you're going to actually be able to listen to people, to learn from people, and to love people in a state and in an environment in which you are full of disagreement, it is going to be because you are sensitive to the Word of God in your life. It's because you're going to approach the Bible daily and say, I need this. God, help me need this. Help me be sensitive to this. Help me take this in and receive it. It's that idea, again, of taking off things and putting on right things. You and I are the people. This idea, he says, the implanted word. I love, this is so cool because it's already in, right? If you're a follower of Jesus, you have been, the seed of faith has taken root. Now, you might not in your faith be in a place where you're super excited about, or you might be in a place in your faith where you're really thankful that you're in that place. But you might have some areas in your faith that you're like, man, I wish I was this, or I wish I was like that person, or I wish I had this, kind of nailed down in my faith. And it's fine. I don't think we should ever get stagnant in our faith. But James appeals to something that we all need to remember. You and I have received the Word. We've received faith. We've placed our faith in Jesus. And this Word is taking root. It's implanted. It is in you. In other words, you have the Spirit of God living in you. You have God living in you. Which means in Galatians 5:22, when we talk about the fruit of the Spirit, you have everything within you. And as you feed the Word to produce more fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness. Like, guys, all of you have that in you. That the water of the Word can water and begin to produce in your life. Now, I don't know about you, but I think everybody could use more of this. I'm willing to bet that you work with some people that could probably use some of this more in their life. They could use more joy, love, peace, probably a little bit more patience. I could use that. Ask Bethany, okay? But this is our opportunity to be people that can say, yes, I want to listen to people more. I want to learn more from people. I want to be the type of individual that can still speak eternal impact into people's life after a temporary season. I think we all want to be that type of individual. How do we get there? We receive with sensitivity what God is saying to us every single day. And we receive it so that you and I can go out and affect change. Because this is what we're called to do. This is what we're called to do. We're called to be kingdom people, taking kingdom culture wherever we go. Did you know that ministry is not primarily centered around what's happening right here? Like, what's my job, right? It's to equip you for the work of the ministry. So that's what we're doing. So what that means is when you leave here, ministry needs to take place in your house and with your neighbors and at your job. Like, wait, ministry doesn't take place at church? No. Church is like just where we get equipped to go do what we need to do. To where we go spread the word. Think about, you guys have maybe heard of the phrase, the Great Commission, right? Matthew 28, verses 18 through 20. It says to go and teach people about Jesus. And then it says baptize them. And then it says disciple them, which is Jesus saying, go make disciples, people that follow me, so that they'll go and make disciples, people that follow Jesus, of other people, right? So right, our mission corporately kind of together is to leave here because we're following Jesus by being here, and you pray and you read your Bible and you do things, right, that people of faith do. And so our task then is to go out into the world and do that again, to help other people find and follow Jesus, right? Leading people in a growing relationship with Jesus. We're all a part of that mission. We're all a part of that journey together. That's the commission that we've all been sent on. But how do we do that, right? What's the great commandment, right? Matthew 22, 37 through 39. The guy asked Jesus, what's the great commandment? He says, love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And then what? Love your neighbor as yourself. So you have the great commission, you have the great commandment, but then all the way back in Genesis 1, 26 through 27, you have what's called the cultural mandate. So think about who was it that Jesus told to go be fruitful and multiply and have dominion over all the earth? Who was that? It was Adam and Eve, right? Were they were what? They were kingdom people, right? They weren't, there was no sin. So the idea was, hey, people that are God's kingdom people, go spread kingdom people culture all over the world. Now that got train wrecked royally, didn't it? Right? You don't really see a lot of overarching kingdom culture in our world today. But that doesn't change the mandate. So why is a message or kind of a two-part thing like this so important in this season? Because you and I are called to still fulfill the cultural mandate. We're to be kingdom people that take kingdom culture everywhere we go, to spread around the fruits of the Spirit of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and faithfulness. That's what we're called to do as we share the message of Jesus. Even in an election year. So as we leave here today, let's make sure that we're quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. Listen to people, learn from people, but most importantly, love people. Because you and I are not gathering here just to do ministry here. No. We're gathering to realize and understand, you know what? The way that I talk and praying with my neighbor, praying with my coworker, seeing how they're doing really, that's the ministry. That's the work of the ministry, and that's what we're called to spread. We're not called to spread anything else other than kingdom culture. And to be clear, right? Backtrack on last week. We're not talking about not having an opinion and not having a vote. We're talking about unity above other things. Because this is what I know about every single one of us in this room. Every single one of us in this room has a lot of different opinions about a lot of different stuff right now. But you know what we can agree on? It's our job to be kingdom people that take kingdom culture everywhere we go. And here's the good news. You and I can do that while disagreeing with people about politics and policy, right? We can disagree, right, about what's best for people, but we have to agree that what's best for people is best, right? We can disagree politically and still love unconditionally. So let me encourage you, as I encourage myself, as I've been challenged, from this, let's make sure that we are leaving here to the best of our God-enabled ability to listen, to learn, and to love people during this season. Let's fulfill the Great Commission. That's what we're called to do. By keeping the Great Commandment and taking that kingdom culture every single place you go this week. And it's so simple. Just pray with people, ask people about their day, have them over, just love on people, Like that whole thing, love your neighbor as yourself. What a profound statement, Jesus. What would I want in a 2020 election year for someone to do to me? And go do that to your neighbor. Like just give them a good word, pray with them, or whatever. So today, let's close in a prayer for unity around as we leave here today and seek to spread kingdom culture everywhere we go. Jesus, thank you for overcoming the world. Because of that, we can experience unity with you. And because we can be unified with you, we can experience unity with each other. It's by you all things together. And as we seek to center our lives around you, help us to see all the ways that you're at work in the world. We ask you to do your heart so that we begin to see each other the way you see us. That you would encourage us to look out not only for our own interests, but also others. We want your as it is in heaven. So unite us in purpose so that nothing keeps people searching for you from believing in you. May we experience such perfect unity that the world will know that you sent us and that you love them unconditionally. We ask that you come, Jesus, and do in our lives what only you can do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Guys, appreciate you being here today. I'm going to wrap it up. But it was awesome to see you all here, and I hope this has been a blessing and at least encouraging. Give you some tools maybe and some thoughts and some direction as you head into your week in this crazy political season. So.